Imagine walking around with like a completely shattered collarbone.
Ouch. Yeah, that sounds awful.
Right. But because you didn't break it playing professional football, society, and honestly, even your own brain convinces you it's just, a mild ache, like you just need to walk it off.
Yeah, just tough it out.
Exactly. You try to sleep, you try to work, and you're just wincing in agony every single day. Meanwhile, everyone around you is wondering why you're being so, dramatic over a little stress.
It's a wild double standard. I mean, that scenario sounds completely absurd for a physical injury.
Totally absurd. Yet that is exactly how we treat trauma today. Welcome to the deep dive.
That'd be here.
Today, we are looking at a topic that, honestly, it fundamentally reshapes how we understand the human body and mind after something terrible happens. We've got our hands on some truly eye-opening source material today.
We really do.
Yeah, it's excerpts from the Georgia Clinician's Guide to PTSD Recovery and Telehealth Care.
And this document, it's so vital because it really serves as a wake-up call to the medical community. I mean, it's a guide aimed squarely at healthcare professionals,
Right.
outlining not just the stark reality of trauma, but the specific actionable pathways to healing that have historically just been totally out of reach for the average person.
Yeah, and that brings us to our mission for today's deep dive, which is really twofold. First, we are going to completely shatter the narrow, highly restrictive stereotypes surrounding post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD.
Which is so needed.
It really is. And second, we're going to explore how modern telehealth is making evidence-based, highly effective trauma care remarkably accessible. We're specifically looking at a model out in Georgia.
Yeah, it's a great model to look at.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right out of the gate, the source material makes it abundantly clear that PTSD is heavily misunderstood. And, because it's misunderstood, it is massively underdiagnosed in the general public.
What's fascinating here is the specific audience this guide is targeting with that warning.
Oh, yeah. Who are they talking to?
Well, it's directed at community partners and primary care providers. So the PCPs...
Like your everyday family doctor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The authors are explicitly flagging this for family doctors, pediatricians, general practitioners. And the reason is that these everyday doctors are almost always the very first line of defense.
Right, because people don't go straight to a trauma specialist.
Exactly. They see the patient who comes in complaining of chronic fatigue or mysterious headaches, irritable bowels, maybe a complete inability to sleep.
Yeah.
Patient doesn't walk into the clinic saying, "Hey, doc, I have unhealed trauma."
Right. They just say they feel awful.
Yeah, they walk in saying, "My body is breaking down and I literally don't know why."
That is such a good point, because we have this incredibly persistent cultural narrative about who is actually, quote unquote, allowed to have PTSD.
Oh, 100%.
We really need to start with who gets it, because if you misunderstand the victim, the doctor misses the diagnosis completely. Like, when we hear PTSD, almost all of us immediately picture a soldier.
Right, returning from a war zone. We picture combat.
Always combat. But the guide lists a whole spectrum of experiences that trigger the exact same physiological and psychological response, doesn't it?
It does. The source text is completely unambiguous about this underdiagnosis in non-veteran populations. It highlights that PTSD develops after, say, severe motor vehicle accidents.
Car crashes, yeah.
Right. Or it stems from medical trauma, like waking up on a ventilator in the ICU or getting a really sudden severe medical diagnosis.
Oh, wow. I wouldn't have even thought of that as PTSD.
A lot of people don't. It also covers assault, intimate partner violence, and traumatic sudden loss. And it even explicitly mentions complications during childbirth.
Childbirth.
Yeah, a tough birth, like where a mother feels her life or her baby's life slipping away. That is a profoundly traumatic event that violently rewires the nervous system.
That makes total sense, but society never treats it that way. It's like society treats trauma a lot like a sports injury. We act as if only the professional athletes, the combat veterans or the first responders, can get genuinely catastrophically hurt.
This is a perfect analogy.
Right. If a pro athlete tears a ligament, everyone agrees they need surgery and months of rehab. But if an everyday person, say an accountant or a teacher, is in a severe car wreck
Or barely survives a horrific childbirth experience.
Exactly. Society just expects them to bounce back. The implicit message is like, well, you survived. The baby is here. The car is replaced. Why aren't you over it yet?
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that analogy captures the sheer danger of this societal misconception. Because we've restricted the definition of valid trauma to just the battlefield, everyday survivors of trauma do not self-identify as having PTSD.
They just think they're weak.
Precisely. A woman who survived intimate partner violence or a guy who is T-boned at an intersection, they might be suffering tremendously. I mean, their nervous system is literally screaming. But they tell themselves, well, I wasn't in a war. This is just stress. I just need to be tougher. And without that self-identification, they never seek specialized help. The suffering just remains totally private and invisible.
It's tragic. You don't think you qualify for the diagnosis, so you just suffer in silence, assuming you're just, I don't know, failing at handling normal adult life.
Which is so unfair to them.
It is. But if people aren't going to recognize the cause of their pain as being bad enough to warrant help, they really need to be able to recognize what living with the disorder actually looks and feels like on, say, a random Tuesday afternoon.
We definitely need to decode the symptoms of an unresting body.
Yeah, let's do that. The text breaks down the DSM-5 criteria, right? Which lays out 4 main pillars of PTSD.
Yes, 4 pillars.
Let's start with the first one. The guide calls it intrusion symptoms. What does that actually mean?
So intrusion is basically the past violently forcing its way into the present. Yeah. The source mentions intrusive memories and flashbacks. And mechanistically, this happens because the brain misfiles the traumatic memory.
Misfiles it, like in a filing cabinet.
Exactly. Normally, your brain's filing cabinet, which is the hippocampus, it stamps a memory with a time and date. You know what happened in the past.
Okay, got it.
But in trauma, the brain's alarm center, the amygdala, is so overwhelmed that the memory never gets a timestamp.
Oh, so it just floats there.
Right. So when something triggers that memory, your brain pulls the file, and because there's no past tense attached to it, your body reacts as if the threat is currently in the room.
That is terrifying.
It is. You aren't just remembering a car crash. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense up, literally as if the car is hitting you right in that exact moment.
That sounds absolutely exhausting to experience just once, let alone constantly.
It's draining.
Which honestly explains the second pillar perfectly. Avoidance. I mean, if an intersection makes your brain think you are actively dying, of course you are going to avoid that intersection.
Avoidance is a deeply human, incredibly powerful coping mechanism. But it comes with a terrible cost.
How so?
Well, if you avoid that intersection, your brain registers a rush of relief. And that relief chemically reinforces the fear.
Oh, I see. It rewards you for running away.
Exactly. So next week, you start avoiding driving on the highway. A month later, you avoid getting into a car, even as a passenger. The neurological reward loop of avoidance actively shrinks a patient's life until their world is basically the size of their living room.
Shrinking your life? Man, that's a devastating metric.
It really is.
And then there's the third pillar, the guide details, which involves negative shifts in mood and cognitions. That sounds a bit like depression, right?
Yeah, it can look like it, but it's really a structural rewiring of how a person views the world and themselves. It's far beyond just feeling down.
Okay, what does it look like then?
A patient might develop this really rigid belief that the entire world is totally dangerous and absolutely no one can be trusted. Or they might feel a deep, persistent detachment from their own children or their spouse.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. They might find themselves completely unable to experience any joy or satisfaction. The trauma acts like this dark filter over their entire consciousness, essentially alienating them from the person they used to be.
That is so heavy. And then the final pillar, which really seems to tie all this physical exhaustion together, is hyperarousal. The text describes this as jumpy nerves, or basically a body that simply won't let you rest.
Hyperarousal is your nervous system stuck in a continuous loop of overdrive.
Like a broken alarm.
Exactly. Imagine the smoke detector in your house blaring at maximal volume 24/7, even when there's absolutely no fire. Your adrenal glands are just constantly pumping out cortisol and adrenaline.
So you're just redlining all day.
Yeah. You are easily startled by someone just dropping a pan in the kitchen. You're constantly scanning the grocery store for threats. You can't even concentrate on a simple email. And sleep. Sleep becomes nearly impossible.
Because your body thinks it's in danger.
Right. Your body is perpetually preparing to fight off an attacker or run for your life while you were literally just trying to sit at your desk and work.
Okay, let me push back a little here, because I think anyone listening to this is probably mentally scanning their own recent reactions to a bad week.
Sure, that's natural.
Right, because life is inherently stressful. People go through terrible divorces, they lose jobs, they get into fender benders. It is completely normal to feel jumpy after a scare, or to feel kind of detached after a profound loss.
It is normal, yes.
So how do you, the listener, know if you are just having a highly stressful, totally normal human reaction to a terrible event versus actual clinical PTSD?
That's a crucial question. And the source text provides a very clear, defining metric for that exact distinction. It's all about the timeline.
The timeline.
Yeah. The specific symptoms we just talked about, the flashbacks, the expanding avoidance, the structural mood shifts, the constant hyperarousal, they must persist for more than 1 month.
Just 1 month. Wow. That's a lot shorter than I think most people would guess. I would have thought it had to be like 6 months or a year.
A lot of people think that.
Yeah.
But the human mind and body possess an incredible capacity for natural recovery. In the immediate days and weeks following a trauma, feeling jumpy or having nightmares, that's a standard acute stress response.
Like your brain is just trying to process the shock.
Exactly. Your brain is trying to make sense of what happened. But if a month has passed, or as the guide points out, if a whole year has passed since a medical scare, and your body still won't let you rest, the natural healing process has stalled out.
The engine is flooded.
The engine is completely flooded. At that point, it is no longer a matter of just giving it time. It is a real neurological and psychological diagnosis that requires specialized intervention.
Honestly, knowing there is a definitive threshold where you can just stop blaming yourself for not being over it yet is a massive relief.
It really is validating for a lot of patients.
But recognizing the symptoms is only empowering if there's a realistic path forward to fix them, right?
Absolutely.
And the guide makes this really reassuring promise that you don't have to carry this alone. Here's where it gets really interesting. The guide highlights 3 evidence-based treatments: EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing,
Right.
cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, and prolonged exposure. I like to think of these treatments as physical therapy for the brain.
That's a great way to put it. Elaborate on that analogy a bit. How does physical therapy translate to treating a misfiled memory?
Well, when most of us picture therapy, we picture, walking in, lying down on a leather couch, and just venting about our childhood to someone who just nods and takes notes.
Classic movie therapist trope.
Exactly. But that's not what this is at all. If you have a frozen shoulder, a physical therapist gives you specific, sometimes painful movements to break down the scar tissue and restore your mobility, right?
Right. It's active work.
Yeah. You don't just talk about the shoulder. You work the shoulder. These trauma therapies are targeted, highly structured exercises designed to help the brain process and heal from the literal scar tissue of trauma.
Yes.
They actively help the brain unstick those terrifying memories and file them away in the past tense so they stop hijacking the nervous system today.
That framing gets right to the mechanics of why these treatments work so well. Take EMDR, for instance. Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing uses what we call bilateral stimulation.
Bilateral stimulation. What does that actually look like in a session?
So a therapist might have the patient follow a moving light, or just follow the therapist's fingers back and forth with their eyes while actively recalling the traumatic event.
Wait, so just moving your eyes back and forth, how does that help?
Well, this side-to-side eye movement mimics what happens during REM sleep.
Oh, rapid eye movement.
Exactly. Which is when the brain naturally processes our daily memories. So by actively engaging this mechanism while focusing on the trauma, EMDR essentially forces the brain to finally digest the memory. Yeah, it strips away the intense physiological panic attached to it.
Huh.
The memory remains, you don't forget what happened, but the body stops reacting to it as a present threat.
That is incredible. You are physically hacking the brain's processing system.
You really are.
Yeah.
And cognitive processing therapy, or CPT, takes a different but equally structured route. It systematically targets the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so more thought-based.
Yes, it helps the patient identify and challenge the deeply distorted beliefs they've developed about the trauma.
Like what kind of beliefs?
Well, if a car crash survivor firmly believes nowhere is safe and I cannot protect myself ever, CPT provides rigorous mental exercises to dismantle that exact thought pattern.
Ah, I see.
And prolonged exposure, similarly, gradually and safely, helps a person face the very memories and situations they've been avoiding.
So reversing that avoidance loop we talked about earlier.
Exactly. By repeatedly confronting the memory in a totally safe environment, the brain eventually learns that the memory itself cannot hurt them. The fear response is extinguished.
It's real clinical work. You're actively retraining the brain's alarm system.
It is. But this raises an important question, though.
What's that?
It is wonderful that these scientifically proven treatments exist, right?
Oh.
But the brutal irony of PTSD is that the disorder itself prevents people from getting the help.
Oh, because of the avoidance.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the 4 main pillars is avoidance. If your primary symptom is avoiding new situations, feeling terrified of leaving your house, or being constantly hyper-vigilant in public,
Then asking you to drive 45 minutes to a clinic is a nightmare.
it's an insurmountable barrier.
Yeah.
Asking them to sit in a strange clinic waiting room with a bunch of other stressed people, they won't do it. The disease actively prevents the cure.
That is such a vicious cycle. But telehealth is the absolute game changer here, isn't it?
It really is.
The guide models this accessible care through an organization called Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC. And, it's easy to think of telehealth as just like setting up a quick Zoom link.
Right, like a casual video chat.
Yeah. But treating severe trauma requires a really sophisticated ecosystem. CHC is a telehealth therapy practice that serves all 159 counties in the state of Georgia.
And that geographic reach is just critical.
Why is that so important for Georgia specifically?
Because if you live in downtown Atlanta, you might have 20 trauma specialists within a 5-mile radius of your apartment. But if you live in a deeply rural county in Georgia, the nearest specialist could easily be a 3-hour drive away.
Which no one is doing if they have severe avoidance symptoms.
Exactly. By utilizing 100% high-pay, compliant, secure telehealth, CHC completely obliterates that geographic barrier. A patient can log into a session from the absolute safety of their own living room.
Which is huge.
It's everything. For someone battling hyperarousal and agoraphobia, not having to fight traffic or sit in a public waiting room, that is literally the difference between getting their life back and suffering in silence for decades.
That makes total sense. And the guide breaks down exactly who is on the other side of that screen, which matters immensely.
It matters a lot.
Right, because if you are logging on to share the worst moment of your life, you need to know the person clicking accept on the video call is actually qualified.
Right, you need an expert.
And CHC has a diverse, culturally competent team of over 15 licensed therapists. We're talking licensed clinical social workers, LCSWs, licensed professional counselors, LPCs, and licensed marriage and family therapists, LMFTs.
And having that specific variety of licenses under one virtual roof is highly intentional.
Why is that?
Because trauma rarely happens in a vacuum. It acts like a blast wave that rippers out and affects the entire family ecosystem.
Oh, that's a really good point. It doesn't just affect the individual.
No, it affects everyone around them.
Yeah.
So an LMFT, for example, is crucial because unhealed trauma often bleeds into a marriage, causing really severe relationship distress.
Yeah.
Or an adolescent who witnesses domestic violence, they need a clinician specialized in teen therapy.
Which CHC has, right?
They do. They offer individual therapy, but also couples, family, and teen therapy for ages 13 and up. They even offer life coaching.
That's amazing.
Yeah, having a single hub that can address anxiety, depression, trauma, grief, and relationship issues via telehealth, it really creates a comprehensive safety net for a whole family.
Okay, but whenever I hear phrases like comprehensive, specialized care, and culturally competent team, my brain immediately translates that to unaffordable, out-of-pocket luxury.
That is the standard assumption. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if a listener finally summons the courage to seek help for an unresting body, discovering they need to pay like hundreds of dollars a session out of pocket is a massive secondary trauma.
That's a huge deterrent.
So is this kind of specialized care financially completely out of reach for the average person?
You'd think so, but the guide provides the financial reality of the CHC model, and it's built explicitly for accessibility. They have partnered with the major insurance networks to absorb that cost.
Okay, give me some numbers.
For patients on Medicaid, the copay for this specialized trauma care is $0.
Right, $0. Literally free to the patient.
Literally $0 out of pocket.
Wow. That removes the financial barrier entirely for the most vulnerable populations.
Completely removes it. And for those with major commercial plans, the guide specifically lists your Aetnas, Cignas, Blue Cross Blue Shields, United Healthcares, and Humanas.
So all the big ones.
Yeah, all the major players. For those folks, sessions generally range between $10 and $40.
$10 to $40. That's less than ordering takeout.
It is. They have dismantled the geographic barrier with the statewide reach, they've removed the psychological barrier of avoidance with at-home telehealth, and they've tackled the financial barrier through comprehensive insurance integration.
That is truly incredible. But there is one last barrier that I feel like stops people dead in their tracks. Time.
Ah, the wait list.
Yes. You finally admit your body is stuck in a trauma loop, you do the work, you find an affordable clinic, and they tell you, great, we have an opening for you in 6 months.
It happens all the time.
What happens to a person's resolve during a 6-month wait? It evaporates.
It totally evaporates.
But the guide highlights that CHC offers same-week intakes statewide, meaning you decide you need help on a Monday, and you could literally be doing EMDR with a licensed trauma specialist from your couch by Thursday.
And that speed of access is a clinical necessity, not just like a customer service perk.
Really, a clinical necessity.
Absolutely. When a patient with severe avoidance is finally ready to reach out, the system must be ready to catch them immediately before that window closes. Because it will close.
That makes total sense. So what does this all mean?
It means there's hope.
Yeah. If we step back and look at the entirety of the clinical landscape we've mapped out today, the main takeaway for you, the listener, is this. Trauma is not confined to the battlefield.
No, it's not.
It is broad, it happens in cars, it happens in hospitals, and it happens in homes. The symptoms are intensely physical. It's a brain and a body stuck in an unending loop of chemical alarm.
An alarm that you can't just turn off with willpower.
Exactly. But the most important realization is that you do not have to just walk it off. The treatments are scientifically proven to rewire those misfiled memories. And through telehealth models like this, they are more accessible today than ever before.
It really is a message of profound, actionable hope that's grounded in hard clinical science. Your nervous system can actually be reset.
To make sure this deep dive is as practical as it is informative, we want to share the specific contact information provided in the source material.
Yes, definitely.
If you are in Georgia, or if you know someone in Georgia who might be silently dealing with the nervous system stuck in overdrive, coping and healing counseling is reachable. You can call them directly at 404-832-0102.
You can also visit their website to explore their team and their resources. That's cj2zshetherapy.com, or just drop them an email at support@shijitherapy.com.
As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a thought to just kind of mull over.
Let's hear it. We began this deep dive by comparing trauma to a shattered collarbone. Think about how our medical system currently operates. If you are in a severe car crash, an ambulance takes you to a hospital. X-rays are mandated.
Oh, for sure, immediately.
And physical therapy is almost automatically prescribed to ensure your bones and your muscles heal correctly.
Yeah, nobody questions that.
But your nervous system is left entirely to chance.
Wow. Yeah, it is.
So if we started treating a traumatic event, a horrific accident, a harrowing medical emergency, a difficult childbirth, with the exact same mandatory immediate mental health checkups and cognitive physical therapy that we use for our physical bodies,
Yeah, what would happen?
how drastically would we lower the baseline of chronic stress, pain, and quiet suffering in our entire society?
Man, it's a completely different world to imagine. A world where the invisible injuries of the mind are treated with the exact same urgency and precision as the jagged white line on an X-ray.
It's the world we should be building.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Take this knowledge, share it with someone who might be quietly carrying a heavy burden, and remember, you don't have to carry the hard things alone. We'll see you next time.